Yo guys, Saber here. Welcome to today's video. Today we'll be looking at the top 3 players from last season and the decks they played. I personally don't think CPR is doing a particularly good job giving spotlight to the top players outside of the official tournaments that they of course participate in. So I'd like to try to increase the focus on them a little bit. So first of all, congrats to all the top 3 finishers. You probably know all of them. We have Shaggy finishing on third place, Redrame on second, and Patch on first. All of these players have been on official tournaments before. All of them are streaming. They have had several good qualifiers. So top players, all of them. So we'll be taking a look at the decks, and then the question will be like, will these decks actually be viable again? Because obviously that's just been a balance patch, but those are one of the things I would like to discuss with you guys. And then we'll also just take a quick look at the current ranking. So let's just jump over to the leaderboard and check how the last season actually finished. So this is the leaderboard at the end of last season. As you can see, then Patch won with 10,653 MMR. Redrame wasn't very far behind, only 12 MMR. Shaggy was like in the end 33 MMR behind. And he almost got caught up by Camps. Like Camps was playing like crazy in the end. And I think he just needed to win one more game, and he was like really just queuing all he could, but he just was just short. Obviously a bunch of players up here. We also have Cybers, Bart, Iluha, Mayamon, obviously Tailbot, as most of you probably also know. And there are a few things to note about this. The last season was very short, only 3 weeks, which means some of these guys have played a ton of games. Like when you think about it, then 1,000 games per, like in 1 month, well, in 3 weeks. And then that's like more than 300 games each week. Like that's just an insane amount of games you have to play. And most people have done that. Like if you see Patch, Redrame, Shaggy, Cams, Cybers, like all these guys, they've played like almost 1,000. Some of them played a little bit less, some of them played a little bit more. But it's really an insane amount of games that it takes to really compete in these short seasons, which is absolutely crazy. I don't like this format too much myself. Not like I have a perfect solution either, but it really just requires you to basically be playing full time, otherwise you just don't have a chance to compete for the top spots. And that's why I think it's very impressive that we have some of these players down here, like Iluha, like Tailbot, that have only played like 400 to 500 games and still like finishing in the top 10, right? That's really, really impressive in my opinion. And we actually don't have any, like Nigar also has a decent amount of games, I guess, but like when you think about it, then like these guys up here playing so few games, and fewer games than anyone else in top 20, to be honest, right? And still finishing top 10, that's super, super impressive. So this is the first season. As you can see over here, that's the crown point standings. Patch has 40 points, Redrame has 35, Shaggy has 30, and then the rest of top 8 has 25, and the rest of top 20 has 20 points. So really nice start for anyone finishing in top 3. Usually if you finish top 8 every season, you should be good, although it depends a little bit on how the opens go. But yes, this is basically the current situation. So this is Shaggy's profile. As you can see, he had some very, very high scores. Everything was about above 2.6 in the end. Scoia'tael, NR, Monsters, and Nilfgaard. And I think a lot of people played these 4 factions. Some people preferred to play Skellige, but no one actually decided to go for Syndicate. And Shaggy actually ended up with the highest Nilfgaard score overall, which is super, super impressive. So no one had a higher Nilfgaard score than he did this season. So let's take a look at the decks he was actually playing. So Shaggy told me that in the beginning of Nilfgaard, he was playing this Nova list. This was the list that I was playing a lot last season as well. A few different tech choices and stuff like that, but this was what he played to like 2615 or something like that. You've probably seen this deck before. Obviously it revolves around playing Nova to get carryover, just clogging the opponent, and then you have this insane Fulgrim finisher together with the Mentors. Now, this deck is still going to be great this season. it didn't get any nerfs, and the only thing that changed for it was that the mentors got buffed to Adrenaline 3. So this deck is just better. I would probably recommend playing something else in the Spores, especially since Fire is out of the meta now. So maybe just play another Pact. But other than that, this deck is going to be great. So you can easily play this. Then Shaggy decided to switch over to a more classic lockdown. This was the deck that I popularized last season. Well, 2 seasons ago now, actually. Which is like it's pretty standard, right? You have Ball, you have all the good high-end cards here. The Usurper, the Joachim, Ramon, Brathen, Yin, Ku, Cupbearer, and Roderick for the consistency. Double Lux, because Lux is just great. Shaggy's running a slightly different version than what I was playing. He's running double Thinning Bronze, double Hunting Pack, double Brigade. And then he's actually running an Emissary as well instead of one Master of the Sky. So like there's a few variations in here. I think one reason for this is that sometimes Brathens on Informants can break, like the opponents can try to play around it. So it's just nice to have a backup. And there can also be a situation where you have to go Roderick and Joachim earlier than round 3, and then you end up with a dead coup, and it's just nice to have like another card that can set it up, I suppose. But this was the Nilfgaard deck that was used to reach the highest score. And as you can probably tell, none of these cards got nerfed either. So this is also a deck you can just take. You can still play it. It's all good. Then we have Vi. I won't talk too much about Vi because, well, Vi is nerfed. I don't think you can even play this deck anymore. Like, you just lost 2 provisions on Vi, got 1 point weaker, you lost 1 leader charge. This deck is just a whole lot worse now, so let's just skip this one. Then we have Dead Eye Ambush. And this was the list that wasn't very popular in the beginning of the season, but like gained popularity quite quickly. And towards the end, I think all the top players was actually playing this. You have Feign Death, you have Verno. You're not actually running any engines, which is quite interesting. Like most decks were running Cat Breachers and Sentries and stuff for Skytel, but like this deck doesn't care about the engines. You just want to go low, you just want to swarm, then you have triple 12 punish. Actually, yeah, you have Spores, you have Curse, you have Heatwave. So if you were to play this deck this season, you can still, like, the idea is still there. What changed is that Justice got nerfed. So running Justice is probably not what you want to do, so you might have to try to find something else to do with your provision. Not entirely sure what I would recommend. You could maybe try to put Maxi in one of the 5P slots, just because it works as one thinning still. And then you can like downgrade one volunteer to maybe another Dragoon or another Bomber, and then you have an 11P slot you can use for something. Not quite sure what that should be, but you have some room. You might also, like, I think Spore should also go out of most decks because Vi is nothing anymore. Now, Shaggy didn't actually send me his last deck for NR, but he told me it was pretty standard, and Redrame told me that I think that he and Shaggy were playing the same NR. So we will get to Shaggy's NR when we're looking at Redrame's list. So let's move on to Redrame. So these are Redrame scores. Redrame had Skytel as his best faction. He also played Nilfgaard. Didn't get quite as high a score with it as Shaggy did, but still a very, very decent score. And then he had Vi and Uprising Witches. Once again, Redrame didn't actually manage to use Skellig as one of his top 4 factions, which is quite interesting because he actually got 2600 plus with it. And usually if you get 2600 on a faction, that's really good. So really surprising that he couldn't actually, like, he played 200 games with this faction and it just wasn't enough for it to be top 4. So we will obviously focus on these 4 factions. He also tried Syndicate for 2 games, but as you can see, he also lost faith in that pretty quickly, like most other pro players. So let's take a look at his decks. So first off, we got Lockdown Ball, and I think this list is actually almost identical to what Shaggy was playing. I think the only difference is that Redrame is running 1 Phantom Hunter and 2 Master of Disguise, whereas Shaggy did the other way around. All the other cards are identical. So once again, this deck is very strong. Both of them did really well with it. Still can highly recommend it this season. There might be an argument to also not play Lockdown, since Vi is nerfed. Maybe you don't need to play Lockdown. You could also play some other Nilfgaard leaders, but most of the Nilfgaard leaders aren't that great. That's kind of the issue. But you can try to experiment a little bit. Try to run one more good one more good card and try another leader. Kind of depends on what's better in the meta, but I think Lockdown will still be solid at least. Then we have Deadeye Ambush. This list is also more or less identical to what Shaggy was playing, I believe. There's probably a few differences. I think some of the bronzes are a little bit different, but in terms of the goals, it's almost the same. There's no spores in this one, which is fine. I think that's better for this meta. You still have double troll punish, and obviously, if you want to play this deck, you have to change the justice or something else. Then we have Vi. Obviously, this deck was just dominating a lot of last season, so it's pretty nice that it's not actually viable anymore. So yeah, this deck was played. Don't play this deck anymore, it's bad now. And we should all be happy about that. Finally, we got Uprising. And this is a bit of an interesting list. I don't think this was the most common in our Witcher list that was going around. Redrame decided to go for a version with Baron. Most of the top end cards are pretty standard. Like, some people tried to experiment with cutting Assault, but I think in the end most people decided that Assault was good to run. So essentially, usually at this 10p slot where you could run Igni, you could try to run Erden for 11p, you could run Standard Geralt, you could even run Heatwave. You had so many different options in that slot. You could run Prince and Sace. But Redrame figured that he thought Baron was better. And then the only other thing I can see about this deck that is a little bit interesting is the Fortune Teller. The Fortune Teller has a very nice combo with the Griffin Witches, so the Griffin Witches sticks and use Fortune Teller on it. It will, at adrenaline 3, it will start dealing 3 passive damage each turn if you give it Veil, because it won't be able to log itself. So Fortune Teller plus Griffin Witch is a very strong combo. The reason why most people don't play the Fortune Teller is because if the Griffin Witches are answered, then this is just a 4-point brick. But you can also use it in some cheeky situations, like give Doom to the opponent's Ceres or stuff like that. So, and yeah, this deck didn't get any nerfs either, I think. So, like, if you like NR Witches, then maybe you should try out this version with the Fortune Teller and the Baron. So, those were all of Redrame's list. Now let's move on to the World Champion patch. So, next up we got Pajabol. And as you can see, Pajabol decided to go for NR Uprising Witches. He went for Deadeye Ambush. Then he went for Urchin Ritual for Skellige, but not Lip as you usually see. He actually went for a warrior version, so very excited to show you guys that deck. And then he had Vi, like most other people. Interesting thing here is that Patch did not actually manage to play, to like get Nilfgaard as one of his top 4 faction, like both Redrame and Shaggy did. So interesting to see that it's not actually the same factions that all of them are playing. And then finally we have Syndicate for Patch, and shout out to Patch for actually trying it out. I remember Patch was talking a lot about it in the beginning of the season. The Syndicate wasn't actually as bad, and we were all underestimating it. But it seems like he also reached the conclusion in the end that it just wasn't worth the effort. So let's take a look at the lists he was actually playing. Alright, so first off we got Deadeye Ambush. This is almost the same list as Shaggy and Redrame were playing. Might be some small variations in terms of the bronzes. Again, he's running Spores in this list. There's also the Justice, which you definitely want to take out if you want to keep playing this sort of deck. And the rest is the same as the other guys. Then we got Uprising, whereas Shaggy and Redrame decided to go for the Baron build. Then Patch decided to go for Erden. Now, Erden obviously has the advantage that you can tutor it from Gwent. You don't have to care about Defender. So, like, there's a lot of stuff to like about Erden. The issue is that sometimes it can be a little bit awkward. The opponent might have an easier time playing around it sometimes. At the same time, let's say you're queuing into a lot of Nilfgaard cloggers, then they can play the Defender, they can play the Colgrim, you don't care, you just play Erden, and then you're fine. The rest of the deck is pretty standard. Obviously, you have to run 1 less 5p since you're running Erden, so he got rid of the Boiling Oil, I believe, and just runs 1 more 4p as a Royal Guard here. Then we have Urchin Ritual, and this deck is very interesting. I think this deck got like popularized, I think it was by Shinmiri throughout last season, and this deck is just doing, like, I was a little bit skeptical of this in the beginning, because it's like, okay, why would you play this deck? Like, don't you just play Arnulf? But a lot of people are actually doing really well with it. Like, you have so many good cards. You have Herald, Ceres, Totem, Morkvark, Turk, Kadush, Skordle, Blue Bar. You have so many of these high-end cards, and then like the mid-range cards you have is like Bear Witcher that works well with Caduce. You have a Stunning Blow. Then you have the ships. You're actually going for front row ships in this build. Obviously they're very, very strong with the raiding fleet, and they just target the opponent has to answer. And then you have some, well, the Shield Maidens for the Ceres. You have the Raiders, which you'll just play 8-point plays in round 3 with Herald Synergy, and then have a few filler cards here. The Brockvat Hunters are just great. I think the only nerf to this deck is the Brockvat Hunters. Brockvat Hunters now got, they are now range locked, which is a very minor, almost unnoticeable nerf. The rest of the cards are all the same, so you can definitely just take this deck and play it if you want to. You won't notice anything. Just remember to play this back row, basically. And finally, like Shaggy, like Redrame, Patch also decided to play Vi. I'm so happy this deck is gone now. One thing to note here is that he's playing a few control tools. He's playing a Predatory Dive, he's playing a Thunder. So if people just give complete disrespect to the Vi plan and be like, it doesn't run any removal, then these cards can actually punish you quite hard. But this deck is gone. We don't want to talk about it anymore. I'm glad it's barely playable anymore. So that was basically it, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Remember to like and subscribe if you like the video. See ya.